Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be, and welcome to the second day of the PATA Annual Summit, Reflect, Reconnect, and Revive. Now we've come to our first session of the day. For those of you who didn't join the Youth Symposium workshop, but this is the first session that is, I guess, not part of the Youth Symposium, but I guess so technically it's really the second session. We've come to our executive interview, but first let me introduce myself. As always, my name is Paul Brancan. I'm Director of Communications and External Affairs at the Pacific Asia Travel Association, and I am, of course, your host for the PATA Annual Summit over these few days that you've joined us. Before we get into our session, of course, let me just go through some technical notes if you haven't heard them before. If you are viewing this event through the web-based Attendify platform, if you would like to chat or send questions, feel free to use the section on the right-hand side of your screen. Introduce yourself, where you're from, what do you do, how you're enjoying the event, how you're enjoying the session. Use that to network and communicate and reach out and reconnect with some of your fellow industry stakeholders here that have joined us over the past these few days here. If you're watching this on your mobile, it's fairly the same. Just click on session chat. You can then submit any questions or chat with your fellow delegates. And with that, that's the end of my technical notes. Now, as I said, we've come to our executive interview with BBC News. And with that, I would like to introduce the interviewer. With us is somebody who's been with us before. She is the travel show presenter at BBC World News. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ms. Carmen Roberts. Carmen?
Hi, Paul. Thanks again for having me.
It's always a pleasure to have you with us. And I'll pass this over to you. The session is all yours.
Thank you very much. Well, joining me today is Raki Phillips, who is the CEO of Ras Al Khaimah Development Authority. Welcome, Raki.
Good morning, Carmen. How are you?
Well, thank you. So let's kick off, Raki, by telling me the state of play in Ras Al Khaimah, the northernmost emirate. What's happening there? Is it open to international tourists? Are you vaccinated? What's the quarantine situation?
It's a pleasure for me to be here and to be here with you, Carmen, as well as part of PATA. You know, the tourism industry is the worst hit industry globally. We've all been negatively affected. 2020 was definitely a tough year, but I think we're very blessed to be in the United Arab Emirates because it is one of the best performing markets from a tourism perspective. So if you look at the country in general, right now, we've had about 9.3 million vaccine doses administered. And and we've got a country that has a population of 10 million. That's a pretty significant amount. If I'm not mistaken, I believe we're top 3 in the world in vaccinations. So that's been great. The cases have dropped significantly. More than other places, the UAE is open to business. We've seen a lot of people that are in other parts of the world come and try to set up business, or at least work remotely from the UAE. Here in Ras Al Khaimah, tourism is a huge factor to the emirate. We are, as you had mentioned, the northernmost emirate. We're 45 minutes outside of Dubai International Airport, and we're known as the nature emirate. We've got the highest mountain in the UAE with Jebel Jais, 64 kilometers of beachfront and some beautiful deserts. But for us, our tourism is very international. In 2019, we welcomed 1.2 million tourists, of which 40% of them were domestic and 60% were international. This all changed last year, and almost 90% of our tourists came from our domestic market. Ras Al Khaimah was one of the best performing markets from a RevPAR perspective in the GCC. We've done quite well, and I'm excited to say that we're opening hotels this year as well. We have 4 new hotel openings that are happening. We've got some attractions that's going on. So for us, we're all performing bad as an industry, but I always like to joke that we're doing bad a little bit better.
So why do you think, what makes Ras Al Khaimah do so well in these tough times?
Well, I think so if we take it back to when the pandemic hit, there was very clear direction from the leadership team and the rulers of the UAE on how to perform. So basically wear masks, sanitize, socially distance, and everything as we were understanding what was happening with the virus. We also looked at places like China, which had the virus before us, and what had worked with them and what wasn't working. But we worked very closely with our Ministry of Health to really understand what needs to be done. A short lockdown period was done right at the beginning, probably exactly this time last year. And then we slowly started to open up in a very responsible and in a very smart and effective way. So from that end, I think that allowed us to be able to make sure that healthcare was good, the hospitals were readily available, and we were taking care of our people. The second step that happened is we said, what do we do from a business perspective? We have SMEs, we have entrepreneurs, we have large corporations, and that's going to have a negative impact. So in Ras Al Khaimah, what we did is we looked at launching a stimulus package. So tourism in the UAE is 12% of the country's GDP, and we have 750,000 employees that work in the industry. And for an oil-rich nation, 12% is quite significant. So in Ras Al Khaimah, we looked at it and said, we need to support these businesses to make sure that they can keep the lights on. So during the pandemic, the first 3 months of it, we launched a stimulus package to really support those businesses. So any non-government owned tourism industry, so whether it was tour guides, hotels, restaurants, anyone that was involved in Ras Al Khaimah in a tourism perspective, we gave them a stimulus plan. Part of it was actual cash that went to them in order to help support. We waived all fees, worked with the local banks to defer any loans that they have, and really helped them stabilize for 3 months, and made sure that we prepared the destination to open as fast as possible. And I was excited to say we were able to welcome our first guests a month after lockdown, and we remained open till today.
Wow. So how long have you been open? How many months?
I mean, we've been open for a year now. During the pandemic, what we felt was, we put the restrictions in place. So we worked with the hotels to say, our industry is, we don't have we're not trained to socially distance. We're a hospitable business. So for us, it's about welcoming, it's about smiling and everything. But we worked with the global brands that we have. So the Hiltons, the Accors, and all of the other brands that we have here in Ras Al Khaimah, of putting the protocols together. So we partnered up with Bureau Veritas to do the safeguard protocols with the WTTC, the World Travel Tourism Council, on their safe travels, and really put the guidelines together for safe opening of hotels. That included restrictions in the restaurants, socially distanced. And we're blessed in Ras Al Khaimah because we have space. Our hotels have sprawling spaces. That we were able to open quickly. The other thing is our villa product, so our hotels, we have 2 Ritz-Carltons in the destinations that are in all villa product. We left those hotels open. So a lot of tourists that are domestically that wanted to get out of the neighboring Emirates would rent a villa, be able to stay there with their family, enjoy and experience something a little bit different. So really, we never really shut down fully. We were always able to keep pockets open until, as long as it was safe and it made sense to be operational.
That's great. So, but has your demographic shifted? Is it mainly domestic, or are the international starting to come back as well?
So the international definitely started to come back, I would say, in September or October of last year. The summer was all domestic, and we launched a campaign called a Shortcation campaign. It was just a cute play on words from staycation, considering we're a close drive to the other Emirates. We were prepared for any market to open, but really the first market that we started seeing open was the Russian market, the CIS region. And we probably did our first road trip into Russia in September, set up an office over there. We're able to work with the destination management companies that are out of there, the tour operators. And I sat with my team and we said, how can we get tourists here? They can either drive or they can fly. There's no other way to get them to Ras Al Khaimah at this current period. Driving was covered, and we went into each one of the markets, and we have the RAK International Airport here in the destination, as well as Dubai International Airport and Sharjah International Airport. Ras Al Khaimah is positioned in a very good place where air connectivity is great. And we worked with each one of those airlines and countries to set deals to have them fly directly into Ras Al Khaimah Airport. We're able to sign a deal with SpiceJet out of India, Russia Airlines out of Russia, Scat Airlines out of Kazakhstan. So a developing market for us, and we were able to launch it. And we have flights that are coming directly from 6 cities in Kazakhstan, 8 flights a week straight into Ras Al Khaimah. And in the first month that we launched this, we had close to 5,000 incremental tourists that came and stayed in the destination, which, coming out of a pandemic, was great news.
Wow, that's fantastic. And I also read an article that said you've now got 9 cities in Russia that have a direct flight that have recently launched as well.
Yeah, with Russia Airlines, we were able to sign the deal with them, and they fly directly into, and it's great to get the business out of Moscow and St. Petersburg, but we also wanted to go out of external cities, secondary cities that want to have a direct flight. And Carmen, people are locked up in their houses. They're limited. They're used to travel. I mean, I was joking. I miss flying, where people ask me whether I want chicken or beef. That whole experience is so ingrained in us that to cut it away completely is difficult. And we found that the Russians were really eager to jump on a plane, to take a vacation, to escape the cold weather, and come to Ras Al Khaimah, where the weather's absolutely been beautiful. So for us, that's been our target, and we will be announcing a lot more flights flying into the destination in the coming weeks.
That's great. Yes, there were some of those cities in Russia I'd never even heard of. Yeah. So what's the situation for tourists? Do they have to quarantine when they get to Ras Al Khaimah, or do you require COVID tests? Can you talk me through the procedure for tourists.
We do, and I will tell you, a lot of the procedures that we do, we work very closely with the UNWTO and the WTTC and other organizations and the World Health Organization to really set up things properly. We've realized that the worst thing that can happen for travel protocol that limits travel is quarantining unnecessarily. And we've seen that people will not travel to a destination where they will have to have a mandatory quarantine. However, PCR testing has advanced significantly, and we you know, for us here at Ras Al Khaimah Tourism Development Authority, we do PCR testing for our staff on a weekly basis, and we've been doing this since August. Now, the majority of the team is we're all pretty much fully vaccinated, but we feel that PCR testing is one of the most important ways to curtail COVID. And that early detection helps to be able to minimize that. So all of our travel requirements for most countries require PCR testing before boarding the plane and within a reasonable period of time. Once you're in the destination, you're fine to be able to enjoy the destination, to have a wonderful time. And before you leave, you're required to do a PCR testing. What we did as an initiative here in Ras Al Khaimah is we picked up the tab for the PCR testing. So any of our tourists that come and stay with us at any of our hotels, we will cover the expense of the PCR to make it convenient for them. And we're now in very advanced talks to look at rapid PCR testing, antigen testing, things that will make the experience so much faster. But you know, the PCR test is really a quick couple of seconds that's taken. You get the results within a couple of hours, and you're safe to travel in and out. And that is really the only requirement that we have. And we've seen very successful rates during the busy Christmas period, the holiday period, which was a busy travel time for everyone. When you look at the percentages of positive COVID tests from travelers, it was significantly lower than anywhere else. And Carmen, the reason for that is you board a plane, you have a PCR test, you land into the country, you get a PCR test upon arrival if needed, and then you're in a hotel where everyone is PCR tested. So it tends to be a very safe area, you know, experience. And then you leave, you do your PCR test. So for us, we find that traveling and international tourists, as long as you can PCR to protect others from getting it and early detection, that is the only requirement that we currently have at this point.
Yes, I agree with you about the quarantine, because I myself have searched over the last few weeks, you know, destinations that do not need quarantine. So I guess you've seen the fruit of that.
100%.
And talk me through the new hotels that are opening up. This is quite astonishing when a lot of hotels around the world are closing down or furloughing their staff.
Yeah, so Ras Al Khaimah has about 6,500 keys in the market, and it ranges from the 5-star luxury. We have 2 Ritz-Carltons, a Waldorf Astoria, to upscale, mid-scale, and even glamping options. The new hotels that we're opening this summer, we will be launching the world's first Hampton Inn resort right on Merjan Island, which is one of the tourist destinations in Ras Al Khaimah. We also have the Radisson Hotel that's opening and an Intercontinental opening, as well as a move and pick resort. And this will be the first move and pick in beachfront move and pick in the UAE. I've stayed at many move and picks in Asia that are all beach destinations, and they're stunning. So we're hoping we can get some of that into Ras Al Khaimah. So that's really adding 1,500 keys into the market just this year alone. We're also in mid-May is the Arab Travel Mart, which is a huge conference. It's a big exhibition for us in the destination. And we're talking about a lot of attractions that are coming on. And Ras Al Khaimah as a destination has invested significantly in tourism attractions. So during ATM, we will be announcing some amazing projects that we'll be launching, all that cater to sustainable tourism, all that cater to the needs of our guests that are staying with us. And I think that will just add value to the destination.
Okay. I'll come back to the attractions because I want to hear more about that, if you can give
Okay,
me a sneak peek.
sure.
But these hotels, have they had to do things differently than obviously they've been in the pipeline for some time. Have they had to modify some of their amenities perhaps for COVID?
They definitely need to, and I think it's only smart as hotels, regardless of where they are in the development pipeline, to prepare hotels for what the new norm is required. Give you a simple example. A lot of our hotels in the destination pre-pandemic were all inclusive. And the great thing about all inclusive, especially the CAS market, loves it. They show up, they get the wristband, and they get to experience the whole thing. Buffets are a big part of all inclusive. We eliminated buffets. We put strict restrictions on buffets, and we had to work with the hotels to be able to come up with solutions that cater to that. So how you do your F&B experience is now completely different. How you serve flavors. So now a lot of the buffets that we have to be served by a staff member. That adds to your cost, that adds to your experience, your wait lines, but it also helps reduce your food cost and control certain elements. From a design perspective, the way rooms are designed, the way housekeeping needs to clean rooms has changed significantly. Sizes of requirements, banquet halls. So we've really sat with the hotels to help them put the guidelines together. Because us as a government entity, our job is to make sure the safety and security of our guests as well as our colleagues is prominent. The other thing that we do is we put the guidelines of how to build, how to manage, how to operate within certain restrictions. So for us, what's been very important is working with them to say, you've got a show that's going on. During times of COVID, we're limiting the amount of interaction. But if you've got a band that's playing at a stage and everyone's PCR tested, we don't have issues with that. How do you do weddings during this era? Ras Al Khaimah was really well known for Indian weddings, and other destination weddings. It's a fantastic destination wedding place. So we used to do weddings where families would come and do a buyout of a hotel or of our convention center, and their massive weddings. That all had to be restricted, but we were still saying you can do your wedding, but here's the new guidelines that need to be put into place. But we've worked very closely with the hotels to make sure that their openings are successful and they're getting a positive return on their investment.
Oh, great. So you've had to restrict the numbers of people coming to the weddings?
Of course. So depending on the amount of cases and where we were during the period, if the cases were significantly high at one point, we were limiting meetings to be less than a certain amount of people. The current guidelines that we have at this point is if you have a ballroom, it has to be at, depending on where we are, at about a 75% capacity. If you're outdoor, you can go a little bit higher. If you're indoors, it could be up to 50%. Really depends on it. And we work very closely with the Ministry of Health to ensure that we put those restrictions. But you know, Carmen, every wedding has its own requirements. Every culture has things that they want to do that's so unique, and every bride is passionate about because it's the most important day of her life. But we wanted to work with them to say, we're going to do some tweaks, but we're going to still make sure that it is the most amazing day of your life.
Well, that's fantastic that weddings are still going ahead, because I know so many people who've had to do Zoom weddings or postpone their weddings. So that's fantastic. And you mentioned earlier about new attractions. Is there anything you can tell me? Give me a sneak peek about these new attractions.
I'll give you some sneak peeks that have already been announced, but really at ATM we will be doing our big announcement. I'll be happy to share them all with you. But a big part of our focus is on Jebel Jais. Jebel Jais is the highest mountain in the UAE at 1,934 meters. And it's the home to the Jebel Jais flight, which is the longest zip line in the world. So Carmen, imagine you get tied down on a zip line. It's 2.8 kilometers, and you're traveling like Superman or Superwoman at 160 kilometers an hour. It's a really incredible experience. We also launched the Jebel Jais flight, which is a zip line experience, but it's 7 zip lines on 9 platforms. And it's about an hour and a half experience. You get to see a bird's eye view of the mountain ranges. We also have the highest restaurant in the UAE, 1484, which gives you stunning views. But some of the announcements that we're going to do is we're launching the Highlander Trails. So Highlander is one of the world's most renowned hiking trails in the world. And so we will be launching that. It's a 55-kilometer hiking trail that goes through the entire mountain range of Ras Al Khaimah. We also have certain things at Jace Coaster. So it's sort of like an alpine coaster that will be, it's a toboggan ride that will be going through the mountain. We also have a driving range that you'll be able to hit eco-friendly biodegradable balls that end up becoming goat feed that you'll be able to hit from the mountain. And that's just a couple of things. We're also launching an eco-friendly sustainable hotel that will be the highest hotel in the UAE. And that's just a sneak peek of a snippet of all of the fun things that we will be launching.
Wow, they all sound amazing. I did read about that, the 5-day Highlander hike.
Yeah.
That looks fantastic as well. I get the sense that all these new attractions are very eco-friendly. They have a conservation element, which is fantastic. Is this something new, or do you think people are more conscious about things like this since the pandemic?
I think it's a combination of things that needed to be done, but also Ras Al Khaimah being the nature emirate, it's in our DNA. I mean, it's in our surroundings. We are building the emirate in a very natural way, in a very consistent way, where it's an emerging destination. We know it's the destination of the future, but we want things to go in a very eco-friendly way. So, and to us, sustainability is not just the environment, it's cultural sustainability, it's economic sustainability, it's working with the villagers, it's working with the tribes that are based here in Ras Al Khaimah to further enhance their experience, but to maintain a lot of their culture. So for us, that is something that's very important, is getting the people involved. We partnered up with a consulting firm called EarthCheck, and they're one of the most renowned sustainability advisors. And we worked with them on really putting our entire pathway from food waste to green build to sustainability to even everything from making sure that the destination is chair accessible and handicap accessible. And all of that are elements that we've put together to make sure that we're building a destination for the future that is being developed organically.
Mm-hmm. I find that the more people I speak to since the start of the COVID pandemic, people are getting back to basics. Do you think that this is more of a draw? Do you think this will work in your favor, that you are the environmentally friendly, eco-adventure emirate?
Definitely. And Carmen, we saw the benefits during 2020. Like I said, Ras Al Khaimah was the best performing market in the GCC from a RevPAR perspective, revenue per available room. We outperformed all the other markets simply because people wanted a natural escape. They wanted to be together, but not in confined spaces. They're in confined spaces in their homes, and they just wanted to escape. And we took advantage of that and said, how can we take this demand and turn it into a very exciting destination that will be sustainable for the future? And I think the mindset that we've always had, and this comes from the leadership of His Highness Sheikh Saud bin Saqr Al Qasimi, the ruler of Ras Al Khaimah, on how do we build a destination that we're proud of 20, 30 years down the road. And we've always had that in mind as we develop things. And I feel we're heading in that direction, and our customers are demanding that. We were looking at trends from the millennial travelers. The millennial travelers are looking for experiences. They're looking for something that is not just an Instagrammable moment, but something that they can carry with them for a long time. Ras Al Khaimah has 7,000 years of history. You know, we've got Dhaya Fort, we've got Jazira al Hamra, which is an old fisherman's village from the 19th century. We have history that is based here. The oldest known coffee bean to man was discovered in Ras Al Khaimah. Before even Starbucks was a thing, Ras Al Khaimah had coffee, and it was from the 12th century as they were doing their nomadic trips from the Yemen Peninsula up to up north. So we've got a lot of history here, from the pearl diving to fishermen, and for us, it's sort of putting the mix of the past to the present and moving into the future. We have to keep nature and sustainability as part of our economic growth.
That's really interesting that people are more interested in experiences now than before the pandemic.
Yeah. And I'll give you an interesting stat. When we looked at hiking, the average German, you know, the average person living in Germany hikes about 32 days a year. Mm-hmm. And when we looked at that compared to the UAE, that was almost non-existent. People were not aware about hiking. In the last year, we've seen that grow significantly. We have everything from individuals, from adventurers, from people hiking with kids and families. We even have pet-friendly hiking days and introduce them to bring your pets with you on a hike. And we've really invested in developing our hiking trails to make them more comfortable, make them exciting. One of the things we launched actually during the pandemic was the Bear Grylls Survival Academy. So Bear Grylls, who's an adventurer, you know, he's got his TV shows and he's been notorious for surviving in the most extreme climates. We built the first Bear Grylls Survival Academy, or as we call it, the Explorer Academy, here in Ras Al Khaimah on Jebel Jais. And we also have accommodation. So you can stay there for a 4-hour experience, an 8-hour, a half day, or even an overnight experience. And it's been sold out since we launched it because people are looking for that type of experiential opportunities.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because I know I myself have definitely done a lot more hiking in the last year than I had previously done. Yeah. And of course, you've just launched a 5-day hiking trek for November.
Yeah. So definitely really excited about that.
Another thing I read in some articles when I was researching Ras Al Khaimah was I noticed that there were some Indian businessmen and obviously some other wealthy businessmen who have a second home, I guess, in the UAE, who were looking at chartering jets, private planes, to come to Dubai and Ras Al Khaimah to get their vaccines, because they wanted the Pfizer vaccine that has obviously been quoted as having less complications. Is this something you've heard about? And what's your view on vaccination tourism, though this story isn't technically true vaccination tourism?
So to be honest, I think right now the UAE, considering the amount of vaccinations that we've done, is only available to residents and nationals of the UAE. It is not available for tourism. It's not available for any non-resident or tourist in the UAE. If this story is based on people that are living in the UAE or have a residency to the UAE, then they are eligible for a vaccine. If they're not residents, you cannot get the vaccine. When you look at, Carmen, I mean, we've done well with the vaccines. Like I said earlier, we've had 9.3 million vaccine doses. But less than 4% of the world is vaccinated. We are a long way away from having the whole world vaccinated, where vaccines are a requirement for travel. Vaccines, at the end of the day, protect you as an individual and make sure that, God forbid, if you do get COVID, your symptoms are mild and manageable. But it is not the solution to travel, unfortunately, because of the availability of vaccines around the world. I would love to be able to say we want to launch a vaccine tourism program. I think it would be great. But at this point, this is not an option, because our priority is to make sure our residents and UAE nationals are all healthy and vaccinated. I will say, from what I've spoken to with the Ministry of Health, with our chief medical experts, any vaccine that's available, take it, regardless of whether it's a Pfizer or a Moderna or Sinopharm or any of the other ones. At the end of the day, vaccine supplies are very limited. You need to be able to take the vaccine that's available to you at the country where you reside, because that is the only way to be able to curtail the virus. Is eventually to be able to get vaccinated as fast and as effectively as possible.
Well, thank you so much, Raki, for your time. There's certainly some very exciting things on the horizon, and environmentally exciting things on the horizon in Ras Al Khaimah, and it was great to hear all about them. So thanks very much for your time today.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you, Carmen. I sincerely appreciate it. And I hope to see you in Ras Al Khaimah one day soon.
Yes, definitely.
I guess it's back to me, huh?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Carmen. Thank you very much, Rocky. Yes, Carmen, you do have to go to Ras Al Khaimah. I've been there. It is a fantastic destination. I really enjoy my time. I enjoy the food. I enjoy the people. I enjoyed every bit. And I look forward to being there next year for our actual in-person PATA Annual Summit 2022. So maybe, Carmen, you can join us then. We'd love to have you there. Okay, so... Oh yes, yes. I did the longest zip line, but I know they have the whole new the zip line jungle, right? So
yeah, I mean, Paul, when you go now, it's a completely different experience, and hopefully by the time we host the PATA conference next year, it'll be incredible.
I look forward to it. Well, thank you very much for that very interesting interview and great insights into what's happening at Ras Al Khaimah. With that, you guys can say goodbye, and I'll just do a quick wrap up as we move into wrapping up this little session here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carmen. It's lovely to meet you.
Okay, bye.
Take care. Bye.
Take care, Carmen. And Rocky, you can turn off your camera too.
Okay.
And I'll just do a quick thank you and wrap up here. Well, once again, thank you to Rocky and to Carmen. It was a very insightful interview to learn about Ras Al Khaimah. As I said, I've been there. It is a fantastic destination. I do hope you join us next year. Before we end this executive interview, we have one quick video to play. It's a journey through Ras Al Khaimah. So please, it's really important for you to pay attention to this video, because we have 3 prizes to give away, but you got to be paying attention. So please do sit back, relax, enjoy the video, and we'll come back to the quiz just after this. So let me stop sharing so my team here can play this video.